Alright, so how to train Jiu Jitsu for your body type. This video is going to be on the lanky body type. So again, my name, Gil Alcocer. I started training Jiu Jitsu back in 2008. I opened up my own academy, the Jiu Jitsu Institute, in 2018, and I received my black belt from the Mendez brothers back in 2019. Alright, so like I said, long, lanky, thin body types. And this is actually, my other videos are starting to pick up some traction, so this has been a request from, I've gotten, I think, 3 different people leaving messages asking about this body type, so that's pretty good. So again, long and lanky, it's a bit subjective. If you're 6 foot heavyweight, not really that long. If you're 6 foot but you're a rooster weight, that's extremely long. So it's going to be noticeably taller than your opponents within your weight class in your division. Being noticeably taller, still making weight, means you're going to be noticeably thinner as well. So that's where you get like a long, lanky, thin body type. Long and lanky, they're typically, this isn't 100%, but they're typically going to be more flexible too. It just seems to be that most of them are pretty decent flexibility. So generally, they're going to prefer the bottom position, and I think this probably starts off because when you're tall and thin, you're going to just be physically weaker. And wrestling takes a lot of strength, so in the training room, they're going to get put on their back most of the time. They're not going to be able to force a takedown because they're just going to be the weaker one. And then this is just like how it starts in the beginning. When everyone's new, they get overpowered, they end up on bottom, so they get good at bottom, and then they stick with, everyone likes to, most people stick with what they're good at. So it's just typically how it starts. They start off on bottom, and they end up playing guard a lot. For this body type, guard is not a bad spot to be at all. The really long limbs, particularly the legs, can lead to a good guard if you put the time in and make your guard good. And this body type is the best equipped for the closed guard. Closed guard is super strong position. It's super hard to escape. The person playing the closed guard, it's a very good resting point most of the time. And then the person on top, you can't really ever rest or relax. You got to keep your posture the whole time, or maybe you can bury your face in their chest and try to rest that way for a little bit, but you're the one in danger, where the person playing the closed guard is not in danger. And then when the person on bottom, when they don't want to rest, they get to attack and start breaking your posture and moving on from there. So they kind of get to decide if it's like resting or not based on what they need to do. So the reason closed guard's so good is with their lengths, the legs again in particular, it makes them, the long legs are perfect for like triangles, and triangles is 2 legs against your neck and your one arm. So if you get good at triangles and you have the length, then it makes it a very good submission for the long lanky guy on bottom, and it's very hard to defend. It's just the strength of 2 legs versus your one arm and your neck is just like not a fair battle. And then even when you're doing the right things to escape correctly, the legs are so long that you have to escape a few more inches than normal, or you move what you normally feel like escaped, you start like pulling out, and then you're still in there, and then that moment you take a break to figure out you're not out yet, they can kind of pull again, and then you're back in that spot. When you thought you were getting safe, you weren't there, and then things just got worse. And then being longer, once they can get to the point where they lock up the triangle, even if it's not set on as far as submitting you, it's not choking you out yet, once you cross those ankles and lock it in, then it's very easy to hold that position. When you're not locked in and you're still working on it, that's when you're squeezing with your hamstrings and using a lot of muscle and strength to try to lock it up. But once it's locked in, even if they're not choking yet, you can hold that for basically forever. Like, it's just so much easier to hold it and then work the rest of the position from there to get the finish. And then very similarly to the triangle is for the same reasons, the long limbs and everything like that. It makes arm bars very good from the bottom too. So it's just a nice position for long legs. They can rest when they want, they can attack when they want, and they just have like the attributes to make those submissions harder to escape than like average. Let's see. And then so them being thinner, like I said, also typically they're going to be more flexible. So when you do get past their guard, they just seem to find a way to like wiggle a foot or forearm, something in there, and just create space. They just wiggle a little limb, a piece of a limb in there somewhere, and then create a little space, and then they seem to be back to their guard pretty good. Top position. So while it's harder for them to get there, especially from like starting on the top, from a takedown or something like that, they obviously still have lots of sweeps, the sweeps that everyone has to their disposal. But once they get on top, top can be a very good position, particularly if you want to invest in the pressure pass. And like I preach about pressure passing all the time, like, so being long and lanky, like again, if you're going to be way taller than your opponents, that means you got to give up that weight somewhere else, so they're going to be way thinner. Way thinner typically is going to be like a noticeably weaker. So weaker, again, that takes away from athleticism, like big explosions, speed, things like that. So they're not going to be the best speed passers. And on top of that, when they do try just the longer limbs, they're easier to get a hold of something and find your way to a guard by making a grip. So long and lanky should definitely invest in the pressure pass. And you might think like it's not the best because they're not heavy, but the leverage they can create with the correct angles with that length creates massive pressure. Perfect example of that is like, not that Roger Gracie was weak by any means. He wasn't like, he wasn't a weak guy for his division, but he was a long, lanky guy, and he's like one of the best ever to do it when it comes to the pressure passing. Everything really, but pressure passing. And then other submissions. So I mentioned the closed guard submissions, the arm bars and the triangles, omoplatas I didn't really mention. And things like that are pretty good for them from the closed guard. But outside of that, arm and chokes are really good. Thinking like Darces and Anacondas, they got long arms, so they can make that last little bit of connection right there to close it up, where someone with shorter or very thick arms is going to have a problem making that last little bit. And if they do, it's the fingertips, it's easier to bust out of. But the long, lanky guys can lock that up. And then, in particular, the rear naked choke, it's like a special one. So like everyone that can do a normal rear naked choke, it can be harder for a long guy to lock it up, the rear naked choke, because again, their arms are so long that it's easy for the person defending to make grips and try to pry it apart and stuff like that. But an advantage that they have is when they shoot it through, they can go from the underhooking the arm and like the seatbelt and throw it up and lock up in a rear naked choke with their opponent's arm in, because they have enough circumference area in their locked up arms that it can fit that arm in there too. Back in 2009, Braulio Estima, he hit this on like the great Marcelo Garcia, and it was pretty amazing back then. But you don't really see it much. But now all of a sudden, the Ruotolo twins, they both scored that same submission to two different opponents on the same night recently in ONE FC, and I think one of them got another one since then. I can't remember, but it's like trendy now. Like if you're long enough, at least it's turning into a bigger thing. All right, so the downsides of the long and lanky body type. So again, like I kind of mentioned before, is going to be like the strength and the athleticism. I already said why, like being taller, you got to give up something somewhere else. But just in general, being weaker just means you're less explosive and athletic. The explosive athletes are always like heavily muscled guys that the muscle, that's what explodes. That's what how they generate the power to create big explosions and things like that. So with that being said, I would say that's also their biggest trouble when they fight, when they compete for long and lanky guys, is going to be the super fast explosive guys, because they have to get a hold of you and hang on you to slow you down. And if you prevent that, or if they just can't get a good enough grip on you to slow you down, I think that's their toughest opponents, is going to be the super athletes. So what they want to do, obviously, is, like I said, make a grip. You want to hang on guys. If you can get a hold of the ankle when you're on bottom, I think that's the best way to slow guys down. But they just want to take some of that athleticism away. It's a lot harder to jump when someone else is holding onto your ankle versus if you're just completely free. And then Roger Gracie, again, he was like the king of that. He didn't start off, the goal is like, it's not smart to try to match an athletic guy's athleticism. The goal is to take them out of where they're comfortable and pull them into your realm. So, like I said, start off calm, you're just looking for a grip, hang on the guys, pull them pull them out of their game and pull them into your game, slow them down, wear them out. Athletic guys, they're typically going to have like the least cardio, not because their cardio is bad, but because they're using more of their cardio. They're exploding. It takes a lot more energy to do that type of stuff. And Roger Gracie was the best at that. He typically, it was not uncommon for him to start off losing the match. He might get a takedown scored on him or a guard pass or whatever the case, but he just didn't care. He knew in 10 minutes I have enough time to do what I have to do. And he was never a guy his goal was to win on points or advantages. He always went for the submission, very high submission rate. So he could be down 50 points, but if you get a submission, it's like a KO. He won regardless. And then their other biggest vulnerability, probably a bigger vulnerability or issue, downside to the long and lanky body type, is getting caught in those same submissions that they're good at. Not really triangles, but like arm bars, kimuras, foot locks, leg locks. Having the extra length on your limbs, it makes it easier for opponents. Obviously, there's more to grab. They're going to have a better chance if they're just reaching to get a hold of something and pull you in. And then same reason it helps you offensively when you're long and lanky, it hurts you defensively when someone else might have to pull their elbow this far to get out of the arm bar, but now you've got to pull it this far because you're longer. So you jerk it out and your elbow's still in there. So same thing, but in the opposite, vulnerable. They're more vulnerable to it. Leg locks in particular. I mean, I think it's getting better now. It's been like over a decade now, I think, since the DDS squad broke out on the scene with all the leg lock stuff. So people are getting educated to it, but long guys usually have long feet. And a tough guard, hard to pass, not that uncommon to just grab an ankle and fall back and go for it. And if you don't have the knowledge, your foot's in there, they get a really good clean bite on it. Longer heels for the heel hooks, all that stuff. But again, submission defense is super technical, so that's at least like a downside that can fairly easily be overcome with knowledge. If you just go out there and learn the techniques, that's a better one to have a problem with because you can fix it just with knowledge. So again, pretty straightforward approach to this body type. Also, again, this is the quickest way to go A to B if A to B goal is winning. It's not the only way, but it's the quickest way. So again, let me know in the comments what you think, if you disagree with anything or maybe something I left out. Speaking of that though, I did forget in my last video, I can't believe I forgot this, someone left a comment about X-Guard and I instantly, it was short and stocky, and I'm ashamed I didn't remember or think about it, but Marcelo Garcia, I should have used him for the picture. He's the king of the short and stocky guys. Best ever to do it at short and stocky body type for sure. And I think he's credited with creating the X guard, and the X guard works great for short and stocky. So throw that in there. I'll make these videos again in the future, I'm sure, but for now, throw that in there. But again, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series. Next body type is going to be like the small, short and thin, like rooster weights, just the really small guys for the next video. Thanks.